and you see in the hills the hovels where the poor are living, the poor and the destitute. Yes, when you look from the beach up, not toward the ocean where the wealthy and the rich look, but look back at the hovels and the cliffs where people living uncaved. It's those people, the revolution of rising expectations, that want something better for themselves. And if we as a democracy, and if the Western world is not going to give those people the hope and the faith and the love and the understanding and the compassion, then they're going to go to communism or any other ism that may exist, because we have failed. Don't blame the communists. Don't blame any other ism. We have failed because we have become a status quo power. We want things as they are, and we're against any changes. We refuse to become independent energy-wise. We want to depend on oil in the Middle East, and we're ready to go to war. Turkey violated many more United Nations resolutions than Iraq did. And yet we do nothing about Turkey when they invaded Cyprus and still control 40% of the island, the Turkish army. See, this is what I mean by how we relegated ourselves to hypocrisy, to speaking with forked tongue, for not comprehending and understanding. Our educational system is disarray. We depend on television to give us a 1-minute capsule of the news. We don't like to read anymore. See, we like to watch on TV what's going on. We have cut ourselves off from the realities as they exist, and therefore we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past because we have learned nothing. We have learned nothing from that past. And therefore, we are marking ourselves for extinction and decline and fall. You say you're a prophet of doom and gloom. Yes, I am. Because that's the reality as I see it. What I'm going to tell you, good news? I'm going to tell you good news. Where are the good news? The American people know this because they have good common sense. Their feelings tell them. They're waiting for leaders and leadership with vision and project it into the future in terms of concrete proposals. And if we don't come up with that kind of leadership, it's the David Dukes. They're going to be coming forth. Because the danger to this country is fascism, not communism. Because the same kind of parameters that gave rise to Nazism in Germany exist here more than the parameters involving Bolshevism. Did you hear what I said? The parameters and the wherewithal for fascism exists more here than communism. And therefore, when we are against change, and that's what the Cold War did. It prevented us from change, advocating change abroad. And therefore, we prevented change at home because of a foreign policy and domestic policy intertwined by Republicrats prevented us from bringing about change. And as a result of that, we are reacting against that change at home. When the Cold War drops out, we don't know what to do. Where's our enemy? We don't have any more enemy. We turn against ourselves then. We got to find some enemy. I don't care. Go after Japan. Go after somebody. Gee, Iraq took too short. A few days it was over. We need an enemy more prolonged. Got to take longer. We got to have an external enemy. What are we going to do? 45 years will be conditioned. So think this way and do things this way. How are we going to possibly react unless we have this kind of impulse and propulsion? Where's the leadership? Mr. Droney and Mr. Kelly, to go back to the beginning of my presentation. Where is it? The Southerners aren't going to do it. The Republicans are going to do it, and the Democratic Party hasn't done it. I feel sorry for this country. I feel sorry. But I have faith in the people, because the people are going to know. The people realize. And if it's a grassroots movement that is needed to be started, it will be started, because the American people are not stupid. Think on these things, ladies and gentlemen. Please think. And a very happy and healthy holiday season.
According to their own, following their own purposes. What were those purposes?
I'll settle for the words I used. Yes,
Governor, is this realistically the end of your presidential aspirations?
you'll have to make the analysis.
Tell us what time today you decided that you weren't
Yeah.
running.
They did.
The greatest disappointments of your career?
It would be enormously ungrateful for me to talk about disappointments. I've said over and over, just being governor was more of a privilege than I ever expected to receive, and probably more of a privilege than I ever felt I deserved. It would have been nice to run for president. But it's difficult for me to complain in any form at all.
Do you think that the White House choreographed the Republican effort here?
I really would prefer not to speculate. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference. What's important is that we need to break the logjam. I have to do whatever I can do to avoid damage to this state. It would simply be an ugly contradiction for me to cause damage to the people of the state I swore to serve, telling them all the while that I was on a greater mission to preserve them in the future by fighting my way to Washington. That has a certain romance to it. And to some people, it is a stronger logic than the logic I chose. I thought very hard about it. And it seemed to me difficult to escape the responsibility to deal with the budget. Now, had they made a budget, had it worked out well, it would have been different. But they didn't. I'm not going to assume anybody had perverse motivation. I'll leave that to God and their conscience. All I know is the fact. I need to deal with it. It doesn't seem appropriate to walk away now and say, well, that's all right. Maybe this is an indication of an inability to make hard decisions, and maybe they'll drift this way until another July, and maybe our paper will become junk, and maybe the school districts won't be able to borrow, and maybe there'll be a bankruptcy of New York State. But I need to pursue the presidency. It just didn't seem to come out right, and I told the media that over and over in an anticipatory way when I said you need to deal with one impediment, and that is the budget. And we weren't able to do it. Fred?
You made your final decision, and if there was any 1 or 2 points that led you to reach a conclusion.
It doesn't work that way. It worked exactly the way I told you it would. You get all the facts. You decide when you have to decide. I had to decide as a practical matter to let Joe Grand Maison know, who was waiting in New Hampshire. I had to be polite to him. Couldn't wait until after 5 o'clock when the filing date occurred, because that would have been, would have at least lacked graciousness for all those people in New Hampshire who were prepared to help you. It's difficult enough to say to them, I'm sorry, it didn't work out. They don't understand the budget. Many of them will have doubts for a long time as to what happened, because they don't realize the complexities here. And so you set a deadline for yourself. You owe it to him. And for the media, you should let them know before the 6 o'clock news or whatever it is that they're interested in. Not that I'm particularly eager to see the story all over the world. But, and then you gather all the facts and you make your judgment.
If there was a time that you finally decide that's
Oh,
enough.
the last, again, Fred, as we said over and over, you need to get all the information you can. The last bits of information that those of you who have spent the last delightful couple of nights here observing from out of town was, what is the legislature doing? And I must tell you, there must have been 4 or 5 or 6 times when we went back to the Senate looking for some glimmering that they would be at all reasonable. And even Saul Weprin, the indefatigably optimistic Saul Weprin, had to say at one point, these guys just don't want to do anything for now. But you couldn't quit on it. You couldn't say that prematurely. And so I spoke to Ralph Marino as early as a couple of hours ago. After the last talk with Ralph Marino, I called Drew Zambelli and said, I'm going to write a statement. There is no alternative here. And I wrote a statement.
The word use.
In the campaign.
Whatever the party wants. The party, Ron Brown said that the best thing for the party is for me to make clear now that if we settle the budget in a month or a week, it's too late, that this should be some kind of definitive deadline, and that's what we'll treat it as. He believes that's in the best interest of the party. I'll accept that. You don't like to suspect that you could even be a cause for inconvenience to anybody. I don't like reading about people, unnamed people from the West saying they're waiting for Cuomo. So that won't happen now. We'll make it clear to them that I won't be pursuing that option.
Does it pain you that you missed a moment in history, Governor? Does it pain you that you may have missed a moment in history for yourself, for the country?
I will work toward that level of egoism. I haven't arrived at it yet, though.
Governor, would you accept a draft from the convention?
Oh, no. See, we went all through that in 1987. As a matter of fact, somebody sent me a book, Quotable Cuomo, with a baseball hat, and I turned from Buffalo. Okay. Again, you, he means. Will you get down, please, or I'll have to get down? Thank you. I turned in the book, the quotable, Buffalo. Somebody in Buffalo did a book. And the page I turned to happened to be Presidency 1987. And the quote, I think at the top of the page, or maybe the second one on the page, was on exactly that subject. And what it said is, you don't get drafted for the presidency. The process is primaries. The person who, as a matter of fact, my position hasn't changed since 1987. The same question came up. I said, whoever wins the primaries, in my opinion, ought to be the candidate. And as a matter of fact, what I said to the Democratic Party was, everybody ought to agree now